Welcome to today's Who Knew presentation, The Burtner House, 200 Years. Our program is sponsored by the local history department of the Community Library of Allegheny Valley. I'm Kathy Bollinger, a local history researcher at the library and your host for today's program. In addition to the Burtner House, our presentation will also highlight several other historic buildings that are still in use today. Let's get started. Philip Jacob Burtner and his brothers George and John first came to the Allegheny Valley from East Liberty in 1793 as scouts on the frontier. Philip worked as a miller for Alexander Negley, owner of 278 acres of land in what is now known as Highland Park, and father of Margaret Negley, who would be Philip's future wife. In 1796, Philip Burtner and Felix Negley, brother of Margaret, built a grist mill on Bull Creek in Deer Township, now known as Tarentum. 4 years later, Philip and Margaret were married. In 1805, they journeyed up the Allegheny River with 3 children and settled on the land of their future dream home, the Burtner House. With the help of neighbors and friends, over the next 5 years, Philip built a log cabin and barn, planted 100 apple and pear trees, cleared and fenced in 35 acres of land, and paid the taxes due on a land that he had hoped to purchase, eventually 215 acres. Philip had signed a contract for the land with these owners' specifications. This is a rare photo of the log cabin that Philip built, later known as the Honeymoon Cottage. It stood between the stone house and the creek. The family, including 9 children, lived here until 1821, when their new stone house was completed. The cabin was known as the Honeymoon Cottage. Here's a unique 3-legged table. It was built for the log cabin by Philip and frequently is found sitting on the front porch of the house. It is unique in that the top rests only on 3 legs and is not permanently attached. Philip made a drawing and plans for the construction of the stone house from 1815 to 1818. These are some of the things he planned the house should have. It was definitely a community effort. It took 3 years of hard work for the house to be finished. All the materials were gathered upon the farm from adjoining farms on Spring Hill overlooking the Allegheny River and from the river itself. Everything was hauled to the location by oxen, horses, or milk cows as needed. To get the stones uphill, an incline ramp was made. By July 1821, the Burtner family moves into their house. A few days after the family moved in, their 10th child, John, was born on July 14, 1821. Here's an insight of the large beam that goes the length of the house, is 1 foot square, and from 1 tree. Philip carved his initials in a stone by the front door of the house. You can still see it today, as you can the original keystone that was chiseled set high on the side of the house by Philip himself. Here's an early picture of the house and the grounds surrounding. You can see that the house had a lot of acreage and only 1 road going right by. It was used not only as a home, but for community meetings, discussions of the Pennsylvania Canal in 1824, and also a polling place for Deer Township until 1863. The last voting was for Abraham Lincoln's 2nd term. Here's a close-up of the house with the attached kitchen at the back, and you can see a small part of the front wraparound porch. Another later picture of the house and some neighboring homes behind. Here's a photo from 1900. Notice the wooden bridge. The bridge is still in the same location today, but has been restored and is usable. Here's a picture more of what it looks like from 1905. The Burtner House had many celebrations over the years. Here's a few. Here's a photo of the 100th celebration that was in the Valley Daily News on May 14th, 1970. This centennial party was at the homestead. If we can picture, it was 21 years before the forming of Tarentum, which took place in 1842, and 7 years after the completion of the Pennsylvania Canal. This is a flag that is now at the house that you can see that was flown at the 100th celebration in 1921. And here's a photo from Hilltop Hose. They were the only vendor that was chosen at that time to serve refreshments. The anticipated turnout was 1,000 people, but people also brought picnic baskets full of food and were shared. This photo was donated by Margaret Holmes. Everything wasn't smooth sailing. There were rough times ahead. (1854) was the third time the house was hit by lightning. Only a faint crack on one wall, no additional damages. Not so lucky in 1930. The 1810 original barn was destroyed by fire, estimated loss of $15,000. All three Harrison fire companies responded, but were unable to draw water by the nearby stream because of a month-long drought. 1950 brought another fire, only partially destroying the kitchen and the fireplace beam. The fire was believed started in the fireplace flue. Damage estimated $2,000. The last straw for the Burtner House was in 1968 when Pennsylvania Department of Transportation announced plans to raise the building. Here we see the house ready for demolition in 1970. While waiting for a change to be made in the expressway design, stairs, mantels, baseboards, doors, and doorknobs, uprights to the porch, even a wall were taken from the house. More than 5,000 residents pleaded for the State Highway Department to change their design. The walls were ready to be knocked down when the order came, preserve the homestead. With the change in the expressway, 180 homes were saved from demolition, including the Burtner House. More than half of the 100 projected homes to be demolished. Today, most of the stolen items have been returned or replaced. Brighter times ahead, new beginnings. In 1972, the Burtner House was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. You can see this marker on a large rock in front of the homestead. The house was said to be an outstanding example of pioneer architecture. To keep the restoration going of the home, in 1974, a Burtner House Restoration Society was formed, a volunteer group still active today to maintain and keep the house at its pristine look. Let's look at some of the improvements the restoration group has done over the years. The first one here is the blacksmith shop. It was designed by one of the descendants, Roy Burtner, and built with the help of the Tranum Masons in 1987. A second building is the summer kitchen, again built with the help of the Tranum Masons in 1991. An outhouse has been added. There's been limited electricity added in the kitchen, as well as security. Well water is still there, but not usable for drinking water. Another building rebuilt by the Tranum Masons on the original foundation of the spring house. 1995 to 1996 was that restoration. Since 1984, the Burtner House has been open to the public. Past strawberry festivals are always enjoyed, with crafters, vendors, and sometimes even carriage rides. However, due to the 2020 COVID restrictions, the house has not been open to the public. The next planned opening is September 18th, 2021, from noon till 6 o'clock. Will be a celebration of 200 years of the house, bluegrass music at 2 o'clock till 6, food vendors, and also free tours of the house and grounds. I hope you can make it. Here's some other historic buildings in our area. The first one we'll look at is the Harrison House in Natrona Heights. This is a picture of the Harrison House. It sits across from the Mount Airy Cemetery on Freeport Road in Natrona Heights. It sits on 3 acres of land, and these are today's present owners, the Chikolsky family, who have their Chikolsky real estate business inside the home. The home is 4,000 square feet, has 10-foot ceilings, cherry woodwork, 8 fireplaces, and features original bricks that were made on the property. John Harrison is the namesake for Harrison Township. He was a businessman who owned not only this 3 acres of land, but 1,000 acres of land, and was known as the second wealthiest landowner of the time, behind the Brackenridge family. In 1860, his estate was valued at $25,000, or approximately $804,000 in today's market. He was director of the First National Bank in Freeport, a salt manufacturer, and a distinguished breeder of English and Scottish draft horses. He and his wife, Eliza, raised 6 children in their home. This is the original lock and key that are in the home. It was given to the new owners by previous owners. This is one of the original 8 fireplaces in the home. All of them are not in working order today. And if you look closely, you'll see the initials of John Harrison on the window glass. Also in the home is a small staircase leading to an upper floor, which is believed to have been part of the Underground Railway. The real estate business prohibits the home being open to the public like the Burtner House. However, the Chikolskys have hosted one open house for the public shortly after they bought the property to share one of the grandest historic homes in the area. Our next historic building is the Tarentum Train Station. Let's look. Here's a picture of the train station as it appears in 1892. It replaced an 1868 wooden structure. The brick veneer covers this station, and it was first located a little closer to the end of Corbett Street, then moved closer to Lock Street, much closer to the tracks than it presently is today. If you'll notice, the small wooden structure to the far right of the passenger depot was a freight building. On October 26, 1915, the Pennsylvania Railroad began renovation of the station, including raising the track another 3 feet. building a foundation for the train station structure to be moved closer to Corbett Street. To move the building, they rolled the structure on logs pulled by horses. Then in 1916, the second floor was added and additions to both ends of the building, much more like what we would see today. The last passenger train through Tarentum was 1964. Here's a picture of the Tranum Station today. And on the right, you'll see a plaque given to the station August 31st, 1981 by the Tarentum History and Landmarks Foundation. It is listed as one of Tarentum's landmark structures. After the last passenger train ran through the valley in 1964, the property was abandoned and sold to the Tarentum Parking Authority in 1981. It sat there for several years until November 1983, when the station reopened as a restaurant. In 2007, the station was taken over by another owner, John Greco. He invested almost $500,000 in renovations, including an addition for a new kitchen, a walk-in freezer, walk-in cooler, and air conditioning units. He also ran water to the second floor. In 2012, Mr. Greco signed a 20-year lease with the borough. But by 2014, the borough decided to put the station up for public auction. With Mr. Greco being the only bidder, he bought the station for $150,000, and today the landmark station is the home to J.G.'s Tarentum Station Grill. Our third historic building is the Tarentum YMCA, built in 1901. The building was a gift of John B. Ford, father of the American glass industry and founder of Pittsburgh Plate Glass. The building was dedicated June 26, 1901. It sits on the corner of Ross Street and East 7th Avenue in Tarentum, now home to Gatto's Cycles since 1990. The original building cost $50,000 to erect, and it housed Tarentum's first library, known as the Reading Room, that was started in the basement of the building. It was designated a Tarentum Historical Landmark by the Tarentum History and Landmarks Foundation December 7, 1976. In 1988, a new Allegheny Valley YMCA was built and is still in use in Harrison Township. Our last historic building we'll look at today is the Masonic Lodge building, built in 1907. These are two photos of the Masonic Lodge building. On the left is the architectural rendition, and on the right is the building actually as we see it today. The Masonic Lodge 502 received its charter December 7, 1871. And until the dedication of their very own building, March 6, 1907, they met in various buildings throughout town. The three-story building cost $36,000 and was made entirely of brick. The members of the lodge were encouraged to buy stock in the building to help pay for it. But after some difficult circumstances, stockholders were unable to meet their obligations, and in 1908, the building went up for sheriff's sale. By 1920, the lodge was able to buy their own building back at $19,000 under a new charter. The lodge is still active today. The first floor is the business space. The second floor is a beautiful space that can be rented. And the third floor is the Masonic meeting place. This is an ad from the Valley Daily News of 1910 of one of the first tenants that leased space on the first floor of the Masonic building. Miller Brothers Furniture. The bottom space has always been used by someone. It at one time was a family theater. For many years, it was the home of Logan Paint, and today it is home of a gym. Even the basement has been rented out. At one time, it was a small restaurant, and for a long while, including up till now, it is a rifle range. That concludes tonight's performance, Who Knew the Burtner House 200 Years? Thank you for coming, and if you enjoyed today's performance, you may want to join us July 20th for our next Who Knew, Lights, Camera, and Action, a history of area movie theaters. Good night.